turn to at this time. I'm ready to do that at any point. I think we need to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I take you up on that. Bring the bill forward. Let John tell us what he doesn't like about it, how he can make it better, and let's vote. America is really in a national crisis, according to the mayor of New York City, not Lindsey Graham. This is incredibly dangerous, incredibly irresponsible. Afghanistan is now in the hands of the Taliban. The threat of terrorism against the United States is getting worse, not better. ISIS smugglers are involved in getting people into the United States. I think if you brought the Gang of Eight bill or any other bill as the base bill and have a debate on it, this committee would be well served. We could all vote, we could all amend it, and I look forward to doing that.
So let's start by having our staff take a look at the bill. What is it, 7 or 8 years now?
Count me in.
And let's update it, which I'm sure we'll have to do in some respects, and see if we can move it forward. As long as it's bipartisan and has a chance of passing in the Senate as well as the House, I think it's a good effort.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond briefly. I can't even remember when the Gang of Eight bill was on the floor. Was that 2016? 13. Oh, 10 years ago. And it didn't pass the House. I mean, I know you are proud of that product, but unfortunately, it didn't pass the House. And of course, as we all know from Schoolhouse Rock, a bill becomes a law when it passes both chambers of Congress and gets a presidential signature. So forgive me for saying this, but that bill failed to succeed. I know you're proud of it, but that was also at a different time than we're in now. And before the Biden border crisis became so dire. And I think there's a different dynamic. Certainly there's a Republican House. They're not going to take up and pass the Gang of Eight bill. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. So forgive me, but when you keep talking about the Gang of Eight bill as somehow being the gold standard, I have to disagree.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask you a question?
You may.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't here when the bill that you obviously favor was considered by the Senate. My question's simple. Did it grant amnesty to folks who are in our country illegally?
No, Senator, I don't believe it did. I think the decision in the bill was that those who are undocumented, currently living in the United States, would report themselves to the government and pay their taxes and their Social Security. They would not qualify for citizenship, at least in the outset. And the idea was to get everybody on the books once and for all. I think that is a positive step forward. It did have favorable sections for dreamers, which you can imagine I had some interest in. But there were several things.
How is that not amnesty?
DREAM Act?
How is that not amnesty?
Well, it isn't as if they're being forgiven for wrongdoing. They were brought to this country as children and infants. I don't think that there was any culpable conduct on the part of these dreamers, if you wish.
So you were allowed to register, and if you registered, you could stay indefinitely?
No, there was a path to citizenship for dreamers. But there was no culpable conduct on the part of infants brought here to this country.
I'm just trying to understand. It just sounds to me like that's amnesty.
In your eyes, it may be, but if a child is brought here at the age of 2 to say that they are guilty of some criminal act or should have criminal culpability, I think is an extreme position.
Well, I'm not trying to say 2-year-olds are bad people. I'm just trying to understand what your bill does, and it sounds like it's amnesty.
It's lengthy.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I was part of that, and sort of here's what I'll tell my good friend from Louisiana. You got to get bipartisan buy-in, right? You got to secure your border. If you don't, it's a fruitless exercise. You need to increase legal immigration because we don't have enough people to work in our economy, and you need to deal with people here legally, and I've been very open to doing all those things, but it is 2023, and Senator Cornyn mentioned our effort didn't make it. If you want to use it as a base product, fine, but even I would say in 2023, the problem is so much bigger than it was before. It would take more effort on the border. It would take a real lift to stop the flow, and I'm willing to work with you. I'm willing to compromise, but the administration has done nothing. Senator Kennedy, they sent a bill that nobody on our side was supporting, and it was a dream of the left. I mean, again, at the end of the day, I don't mind disagreeing with Republicans about how to fix an immigration system. I do mind doing nothing about it. And the sooner we can have this debate in this committee, and you may be surprised, there might be consensus, big bill, small bill, middle bill, something's better than nothing. America is under siege, and we need to fix this problem.
We're gonna
Mr.
return-
Chairman.
Just a second. We're going to return to the subject of this hearing shortly. What Senator Klobuchar?
I'm looking forward to hearing the witnesses, but Mr. Chairman, I did want to point out the argument that nothing has been considered for 8 years or something like that. I actually view, when you look at the arc of time on this, when President Bush was in, he wanted desperately, Republican president, to get this done. I remember Senator Graham was in the group that worked on this. Then you fast forward, right, to Obama, and this is the effort you're talking about during that time. But even during President Trump, there was a major effort made, led by Senator Rounds, if you remember, an introduced bill that was maybe what Senator Graham was getting at when he talked about a more limited bill. It had funding for the border, significant funding for the border, but it also included more work on work permits and on visas, something people on this committee, a number of people on both sides of the aisle care about very much. Dreamers were covered under that bill. Temporary status people who are already here were covered under that bill. I don't remember every single detail, but I do remember is that we had enough Republican senators to get it over the line. The House was going to pass it, and then unfortunately, President Trump rejected the proposal, and so then it died. That is what happened. I only point that out because that was a very recent bipartisan effort compared to the one that was 8 years ago. So this has continued, and there has been to say that this was about amnesty or any of that, this was actually about moving our country forward because, yes, border, do more, but no great country has expanded with a shrinking workforce, and we have made it so difficult for doctors and nurses and for people that want to be here. It has made it really hard in many of our states, in the ag sector, in the hospitality sector, and others. And I just believe immigrants don't diminish America. They are America, and we have to find a way to do this. And one of the arguments that always seems to get lost is the economic argument for how important this is right now for our country's future.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Whitehouse?
I just wanted to observe, Mr. Chairman, your long and passionate advocacy for immigration reform, particularly around Dreamers, and recognize the ranking member for his helpful participation in multiple efforts at reforming the immigration system. I think with you both as chair and ranking member, there really is a prospect for doing something bipartisan and useful in this committee, and count me in. I would also flag that the next budget committee hearing coming up is on the economic value of more robust immigration, which has very powerful economic value for Americans. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I'll
Senator
get you,
Graham.
I know you want to conduct the hearing, but I'm glad I brought this up. Seems to be there a lot of interest about what to do. And the bill that Senator Klobuchar mentioned got 54 votes. I remember it well. There are many combinations, small, medium, and large. The problem is not just small, medium, and large, it's unbelievably out of control. I've been doing this since 2006. I never dreamed that we would be where we are here today with policies that basically are in shambles. Whether you like President Trump or not, we had the lowest illegal crossings in the last 40 years on his watch. Now, what happened? Democratic president changed all those policies, and we have a tsunami of illegal immigrants that are destroying New York City and other cities. Rather than talking today about what we should do, I don't care what the base bill is. It could be what Senator Klobuchar said. It could be any bill you want as the base bill. I'd like to get this committee involved in trying to fix this problem.
I accept your invitation to be part of that, and let's do it, starting with that bill, perhaps others. Today, we